Hello viewers and welcome to the morning program, the Dailies on Equa Television International. As you all know, today it's a new month and it happens to be May Day, or you can call it Labor Day, or you can actually call it Workers' Day, whichever you choose to call it. And we're really excited to be in the studio today and to also wish you a happy Workers' Day, happy May Day and happy Labor Day. I'm Stella Elisha Dasham, and of course I have my co-host Rachel Tanzi. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Stella.
Happy Workers' Day.
Thank you. I wish you the same.
Thank you. Are you excited about it?
Well, I'm a worker, so yes, okay. I'm excited about the Workers' Day.
Of course,
yeah,
and then I have to actually tell you Happy Workers' Day because you're an active worker. We're not talking about ghost workers.
Yes,
we're talking about
active workers. True.
Yeah, so we're live on Facebook and also on YouTube. You can do well to drop your comments or your contribution on any story that is of interest to you this morning. And then later on, as usual, we'll open the phone line. Let us hear what you have to say. A lot of things happening on the page. It's very low. For the past 8 years, workers have a lot to say. If you're going to look at the price of petrol, looking at the price of foodstuff, various things have actually changed, and of course, workers are lamenting. So we'll indulge you to please just sit tight as we take you through what is happening on the papers. And we'd like to start with the National Star, which Rachel will be taking us down through.
On New National Star, front page commentary, May Day, what hope for Nigerian workers? And you can find the details on page 5. You can start with the story on the front page. The big story on National Star, presidential poll. Federal government, Labour Party intensify verbal attacks. The writer following that accept defeat, stop grieving over 2023 election loss. Federal government tells opposition, you've murdered sleep. We'll have no peace by rigging poll. This is coming from Labour Party. And you can find the details on page 17. Leaders salute Nigerian workers at 2023 May Day. And on Labour Party crisis, Abure accuses suspended Apapa faction of plots to convene illegal NEC meeting in Bauchi. You can find the details on page 8. That Nigerians statement coming from the federal government. We are hoping something is being done about that. You can find the details on page 10. 2000 can be found on page 8. I was under pressure, suspended Adamawa Rec Yunusa Ari. At the downside of the paper, NAFDAC investigates cancer-causing substance in noodles. APC and WC may move against Lukman as Adamu summons emergency meeting Wednesday. No plan to phase out redesign Naira note coming from the CBN. You can find the details on page 14. Amidst the scarcity of the new Naira note, the CBN is telling us that they are not withdrawing it, meaning it will still be in circulation. And that's all the news on National Star.
All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper with the big story. 8 years scorecard. Workers lament hardship. Score Buhari governors low on welfare. And then the writer following that say high cost of living has made nonsense of minimum wage. 40% pay raise coming from the union. Pensioners still earning 500 naira, 750 naira monthly. Economic hash under Buhari, says retirees. As the President, Major General Muhammadu Buhari marks his last May Day in office today, Labour Union have scored the regime and state governors low, saying that the workers are inflicted hardship on Nigerians. They lamented the gobbling inflation in the country, which they said has eroded the 40% pay raise recently approved by the federal government with effect from January. Last week, the government paid a 40% increase in allowance to various categories of federal workers, but Labour leaders said the pay raise had been lost to inflation. The Consumer Price Index reported by the National Bureau of Statistics in March 2023 indicated that Nigeria's inflation rate accelerated to a new 17-year high of 22.04%. According to the World Bank, Nigeria has one of the highest inflation rates globally and the 7th highest in sub-Saharan Africa in 2022. When Buhari took over in 2015, petrol was sold at 87 naira per litre, but it is presently dispensed for 169 despite the payment of subsidies by his regime. Cooking gas price also shoot to 822 naira per 16 kg from 256 naira per kg in 8 years, while electricity tariff were hiked to 68 naira per kilowatts per hour from 27.20 naira per kilowatts power outreach. Though the regime increased the minimum wage of 30,000 naira from 18,000 naira, the workers submitted that food inflation, which skyrocketed from 9.78% to 22.72%, has eroded the increase. And of course, Rachel, we're bound to see these on the paper because no matter what we're going to see on the papers today, I think all attention is actually on the workers. It's expected that today is supposed to be a happy day because the essence of the May Day is to actually appreciate workers for their labor. Because without workers, businesses will not strive. We'll have various parastatals collapsing. And whether we like it or not, even the governors and even the president are still what? They are also official workers. So in one way or the other, they are also workers. But we can see that workers are not really happy. Of course, we saw, I think, was the last 2 weeks or so on the paper, looking at poverty rate, looking at even the allocation being given to various states, and yet those states are still averaging in poverty. And begin to ask them, what is the problem? Of course, we've seen that the regime has tried its best to sweep out ghost workers, because we saw quite a number of ghost workers in various parastatals, even from the federal level down to local government areas. We're going to applaud them for that, but then we're just hoping with the incoming administration something needs to be done. If workers are not happy, I mean, back was then, I remember when I was much younger, when you see workers on that day, it's a day of joy. You see people wearing their facing cap, very proud, barbecues in various places, just appreciating workers for what they have done. But reverse is the case. Richard, I don't know if there'll be any barbecue this year because people cannot even afford it. So that is just to say that a lot needs to be done. Yes, we know that inflation is everywhere, but then we have to see what can we now do to make life more, bearable for our workers at the end of the day. Because believe you me, if you are going to take workers out of any economy, then you know that the economy is actually collapsing. So we're really using this platform to appreciate every worker. If the government does not appreciate you, just know that here in Equative we're appreciating you. And we just hope that more will be done to actually, especially when it comes to the welfare of our workers, more will be done in that regard.
I think when I saw in the papers that we have pensioners still receiving 300 and 750, this is the one that breaks my heart the most. I'm not saying those who are actively working shouldn't be entitled to anything, but these are people who have served Nigeria in different capacity for over 35 years. And let's not forget that this pension you're receiving after work was deducted from your income while you were working, with the promise that, you know what, this is a mandatory saving, that when you retire, this should come to you. And we still have these people whom this money they have been denied while working in the name of you will receive it when you retire, are not seeing it. Then it breaks my heart. And I keep saying, whether we like it or not, until we tackle the issue of corruption in this country and stop smiling at it, we will never grow. Because it's not like money for certain things are not being given. It's not like the adequate steps to do certain things are not being done, but the implementation is the problem. And that's where corruption stands, because what is stopping you in that position to implement this the right way? For whatever reason is it that you are not doing this thing rightly, you need to be questioned, because it only says you're corrupt. Because if this is the process of doing something and you refuse to do it, and you are well aware that this is the process of doing a certain thing and you don't do it, then you are a very corrupt person. And until we start fixing our system, no matter how much we complain and talk about minimum wages, we talk about pension, we talk about arrears, gratuities, no matter how much we talk about it, nothing will be done until whosoever is in key positions required to make sure that these things get to workers what they have worked for and have earned for, until we are able to tackle things like this. We will keep seeing grievances coming from workers. Who was in charge of listing, of employing these workers, that we will have thousands and thousands of ghost workers, and you're sitting and you're telling us you don't know about that? It means you're literally saying you've been sleeping on your job, or you've deliberately allowed these ghost workers to exist for your own selfish gain. These are the questions we need to ask, and these are the things that we need to take out of the system, because I believe there's somebody in charge of knowing employees, their numbers, who are active and who are no longer active. There's somebody responsible of taking out active workers from the list that are no longer on the payroll and all of that. Whoever are those people in charge are not doing it. These are all the little things we keep seeing in our workforces, and we are the one, as a human being like me, that is expected to make sure that these gaps and glitches are not even seen in the first place. So Sally, I believe that this is just a wake-up call, that if we want to see a better atmosphere for workers in Nigeria, where everything that is entitled, you are entitled to, and it's due that you're supposed to have this at a certain time, you should have it. If not, yes, we will have people working, happy to get a job, but it's just a matter of time before you realize that the system is robbing you of what you are supposed to get and benefit from it. And I believe that Nigeria will come, but we have to be ready to do the work.
Of course, Rachel, even though it's not only in Nigeria we're actually celebrating May Day. I think in over 80 countries they're actually celebrating the Labor Day or the May Day or the Workers' Day. So just like we've said, in as much as we're appreciating the workers, you know, when they tell you well done, what that means is that you should do more work at the end of the day. So we hope to see workers also, you know, representing the country well in their various, you know, departments. Still on the Punch newspaper, unsold goods stock rise by 52%, coming from manufacturers. You can find that on page 11. Don't attack embassy staff, ambassador warns stranded Nigerian students. That's in regard to those in Sudan. You can find that story on page 7. Federal government dump 5% telecom tax waiver. And then we also have downside of the paper, opposition rigging claim fraudulent, federal government insists. 2 suspect caught concealing cannabis in Gary sack. You can find more of that on page 4. CBN supplies more new Naira notes to banks. You can find that on page 32, and I hope that we begin to see these new Naira notes on our various ATM machines, because we've been, I think it was on the paper, was it last week or so, where there was a question, where are the new Naira notes? So we are happy that CBN is actually supplying that. We have a picture story here where we can see the Chief of Air Marshal actually during the Air Force and their, you know, spouses in an interdenominational service on the 2023 NFA Day in Abuja. We have to appreciate our Air Force workers. And you can find more of that story inside the paper, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, APC legal advisor recommends Lukman's expulsion. Workers are engine room of growth, says Lawan. 3 ABUAD students for UK exchange program. Rivers first to host Tinubu, says Wike. The details can be found inside the paper on page 6. Ohanize leader Owanyawu asks Buhari to free Kanu before May 29. The big story on the Nation newspaper, you remain sore losers, federal government tells PDP and Labour Party. Don't preempt tribunal outcome, opposition parties fire back. And on Sudan evacuation, 637 Nigerians stranded at border. Egypt delays clearance, federal government mills Port Sudan routes. And you can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper on page 4. Coming from CBN, more new notes to be in circulation soon. Why census was shifted, coming from the MPC. And if you want to know why, you can find the details on page 6. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, OPS urges federal government to suspend proposed new taxes. You can find that on page 9. And on Sudan, 637 Nigerians arrive Egyptian border. Envoy assures parents and students. You can find that story too inside the paper. The big story, May Day. It's been terrible, agonizing for workers coming from the Nigerian Labour Congress as workers in oil, electricity, maritime and other sectors grieve over continuous misery and then poverty and hopelessness. Ask government to address poverty, insecurity, unemployment, inflation and the high cost of living. Set agenda for incoming government. You can find all of that story on page 5. And we have inflation, high interest rate drives stock market lost to 1.01 trillion naira in April. With the rider, market loses over 70% of first quarter gain. Analysts disagree on outlook for May. You can find more of that on page 19. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, federal government apologizes over failure to meet the deadline. And we hope that apart from the apologies, something needs to be done to, round up the expressway as soon as possible. You can find that story on page 10. The Southeast governors, Igbo leaders inaugurate, and we will ask, okay, I take that story. The Southeast governor, Igbo leaders inaugurate, okay, I think I skipped that story. Then we have other story here that says 17 buildings marked for demolition in Anambra for harboring gunmen. No plan to phase out redesign Naira note coming from the CBN. And we have some column here for under 17 AFCON. We also have a column for Lukifa. You can find all of that story inside the paper, and that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, bandits abduct many, injure others in Niger. And on Election Tribunal, NLC threatens to shame corrupt judges. 61st posthumous birthday, associates reflect on Sam Ndazaya's big ideas. Urge federal government to confer national honor on the late publisher. You can find the details inside on page 9. Lawan Bajabia Mila Atiku salute Nigerian workers. This is on the May Day, and you can find the details inside the paper. The big story on leadership, 10th national leadership. Lawan Akpabio at war over Senate presidency. Plot to change Senate rules to accommodate a Shomole's ticking. Tinubu may opt for former Edo governor. Lawan leading campaign against me coming from Akpabio. You can find the details on page 4. Dealers kick over fresh taxes on Tokumbo vehicles and others. And on APC crisis, legal advisor asks Adamu to expel Lukman. Abure Apapa continue fight over Labour Party leadership. You can find the details on page 19, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
On this day newspaper, Arise News Channel donates 1 billion naira to Western Delta University to set up media and technology school. With the rider Fayemi offers School of Policy Implementation Institution, Peter Obi, ex-Ekiti governor, to become visiting lecturers. You can find all of that story on the front page and on page 5. Failure to recover AMCO 4 trillion naira debt will haunt economy, Kuru warns. You can find all of that on page 5. Atiku won 2023 presidential poll. PDP replies Lai Mohammed. You can find that on page 49. And on Sudan, Nigerians trapped between Sudan, Egypt send save our soul. You can read that on the front page and on page 5. The big story, NLC CSO plead with judiciary to save Nigerians' democracy. Says INEC has driven a nail into electoral coffee of country. NLC threatened to name and shame corrupt judges. And that is most of the papers. You can actually see all of that story. We also have a picture story here where we can see the Western Delta University 15 Founders Day celebration. Downside, we also have TUC kick against planned privatization of TCN, NIPO's Federal Medical Centers. You can find that story on page 45, and that's all on this day newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, Ohaneze ratifies Nwayenwu as President General. I will defend Indibu. You can find the details on page 27. Fireworks over presidential poll. You lost woefully, federal government tells Labour Party and PDP. You've murdered sleep, Labour Party tells APC. History will judge Buhari, a statement coming from PDP. Southeast Group clamors for Senate President backs Kalu. The details can be found inside the paper. Labour rejects planned privatization of NIPOs, TCN and FMCs. Adamawa Guba, why I declared Binani winner Yunusa Ari is making a statement, and you can find the details on page 6. Federal government accuses El Rufai of placing Unity School students' lives in harm's way. The details can be found inside the paper. Lagos explains demolition of buildings in Ajo Estate. At the downside of the paper, anxiety in Kano over planned review of Sanusi's deposition. The details can be found on page 27, and that's all the news on the Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, we can see the big story having here May Day. And we see the Congress holding their placard and then doing whatever demonstration. You can read more of that on page 6. Again, Lagos-Ibadan road repair misses Fashola's deadline. You can find it on page 9. Over 2,500 undocumented Nigerian students stranded in Sudan universities. You can find more of that story too on page 2. Nigeria loses $4.5 billion yearly to foreign artisans in construction industry. You can find that on page 19. Downside of the paper, NIN insurance near 100 million as government intensifies data harmonization. You can find that on page 6, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
So that is a story that caught my students. It always breaks my heart when such paper, undocumented students in other countries. Now, number one, it means if they're not documented, then it means they went to Sudan illegally. And then it means that our borders are not that safe and secure if we have illegal migration to other countries. And it only proves the fact that, you know what, there are a lot of gaps and a lot of lagging behind when it comes to our system and our government. Because if this student went through due process to find their way to Sudan, then it means we have their documents and we know exactly the numbers of students we have in Sudan, what took them there, the duration, the years in which they're supposed to be in Sudan, what they're even studying in the first place, and the various universities that they are in, regardless of how small, how big it is, regardless of the location or wherever it is. And I think that when we have such news on the paper, the government needs to come and answer these kind of questions. Why are we having undocumented students in another country? Because I believe information might have been reaching them that, you know what, this 5,000 you're thinking, this 3 million you're thinking, that's not all of it. There are certain students here and there, but for some reason they're undocumented because the government don't have them in their legal papers, counted and numbered and all of that. So I just hope that something is being done, that rather than having undocumented students, which shows that we are having a lot of illegal people migration to other countries that are not documented properly, then it means that there's a problem with our system in general for us to have this much we know action to why we have over 2,500 out there
making references. Yes. Till date, we're still having Nigerians stuck in one part of the country or the other. And we saw that not just today we've been, and just like you see, it just shows somebody somewhere is sleeping. And I hope that we'll wake up. Now we see the repercussion of always going to somewhere illegal. Now if there's a problem, the Nigerian government is now, starting with their responsibility on making sure that they bring every of their citizens back home safely. So let's try and make things easier for the government, that you will try to do things the right way. I know that the spirit of Japa syndrome was very high from last year down to this year. People just want to do any problem. You can come back comfortably because one thing is for sure, Rachel, these people will be there until they have brought back all those are documented. Before they start thinking about those women, they're all documented. So it's really a sad thing. And then imagine parents were hoping that everybody will be back and then we are having a story like this. So just like we're saying, it is our responsibility. We have rights and we have duties. We need to really, really know what our rights are as Nigerians and what our duties are as Nigerians. So you don't end up doing the wrong thing. And then at the end of the day, when something happens, Nigerian government begin to get confused on how do we now bring these people back. So I hope this is an eye-opener for anybody that is planning to leave the shores of this country illegally, because worse might even happen to you. So I hope something is done. Well, Rachel, before you go to the next paper, I think we've talked a lot, so we'd love to hear from our viewers. So do well to drop your comment on our Facebook and YouTube page, and then when we come back from the break, we'll open the phone line. So we'd love to hear what your contributions are concerning the May Day, the stranded Nigerians Day, and also the deadline for the Lagos, expressway that is yet to be completed. Please do not go anywhere. I'll be right back after the break. Thanks for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on your winning station, where we bring you up to date with what is happening from our Nigerian newspaper. Of course, before we went on the break, we were giving you some highlights about over 2,500 Nigerian students are still stranded in Sudan, and that is as a result of they are not yet documented, and that's the issue the Nigerian government is having. And of course, today being May Day, Labor Day, Workers' Day, whichever you know it better, we've seen workers lamenting on the poor welfare of, especially coming from the union, complaining that workers are not really finding it, comfortably here in the country. So a lot of things are happening on the paper. So we'd love to hear what your contributions are. Our phone numbers are displayed on your screen at this moment, so we'd love to hear from you. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, because we really love to hear what you have to say. And then you could actually, also do us a favor by being very civil with your language. Of course, I know emotions are up, but please let us try and be very, very civil with our language. I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's move on to the Daily Times newspaper.
We already have a caller.
All right. Hello, good morning.
Steve Jacob, calling from Ogun State.
Okay, Jacob from Ogun State. Good morning.
Hello? Okay, I want to contribute to the online program. Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, yeah, my contribution is, I want to talk about the old Naira note and the new Naira note, and the CBN saying that the new Naira note will still be in circulation. For me, I see no truth in that claim, because here in this part of the world, we don't call it old Naira note and new Naira note. We call it election Naira note and the normal Naira note. So this Naira note that was produced of the election is over. If government is telling us that they are going to bring out new Naira notes again, well, until they do, but I don't see that happening. That is my contribution. God bless you.
Thank you very much for
that.
Thanks
very much.
Yes. On the Daily Times newspaper, ANLCA at loggerhead with NAHCO, SAHCO over 100% cargo hike charges. And the big story, 29 days to Buhari's exit, Niger Delta militants resume hostilities, bomb oil facilities. Issue, we have another caller. Hello, good morning.
San Francisco. Hello?
Hello, yes, good morning.
My name is San Francisco. I'm calling from Jos.
Okay, good morning, San Francisco from Jos.
Okay, I want to comment on Nigerian students. Stop. Okay, I want to comment on the Nigerian students stuck in Sudan as a result of government failure. No sane society, no sane government will have her students stuck in the middle of war in another country. Haba. Nigerian government should do better. They should do better. Who get these students? If it's their own students that are there, definitely they would have got them out of that place. They should do better. They shouldn't embarrass us all the time. They shouldn't be doing this, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, San Francisco, for your comment. However, I believe the Nigerian government are doing their best. We can see updates every day on the paper. They can do more, but as it is, they're doing their best because they're evacuating these students, and we can see that they keep having problems with officials in other states. We can see on the paper today is in Egypt. We saw how others were having issues also in Ethiopia and all of that. So yes, they're doing their best. We should know that when it's a war-torn area, everything becomes 10 times difficult. It's not going to be easy. You're not just, it's not an earthquake, it's not a disaster. This is war. And they have to be sure that movement in and out of their country is not another enemy aiding their enemy or something like that. It is a different situation. So I want to believe that the Nigerian government are doing their best. Of course, we can't say they're doing all the best they can. There's room for improvement. However, we keep seeing updates on what is happening and the challenges they are facing, some of which they never saw it happening. Of course, you'd never plan for something like this, but let's give them kudos where they are. Let's watch and see how far and how well they can do it. It's still an early process for us to judge and say they're not doing anything yet, because so far so good. The updates we've been getting is that they are trying their best, and so far some students are out of the war area and out of Sudan now, but now is now getting them out of countries like Ethiopia and Egypt, the next process and all of that. Yes. Still on the Daily Times newspaper, and we have on the 10th National Assembly leadership opposition numerical threat frightening APC. No plans to phase out redesigned Naira notes, and a statement coming from the CBN. Workers' wages no longer sustainable. This is coming from the Labour Party, still on the Workers' Day. At the downside of the paper, 3.2 billion naira, Senate indicts Bank of Agric over loans to unnamed beneficiaries. The details can be found on page 5. We have a picture story where we can see our Vice President on a visit, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. Buhari's remark, accept defeat, you lost woefully, Leah tells Atiku and Obi, with the rider urges opposition not to dissipate energy on blackmail and IRF Porter. APC moderate sleep, Atiku won, coming from the Labour Party and PDP. You can find that story on the front page and also on page 6. The big story, suit against Adamu's breaches. APC recommend Lukman explosion as internal crisis deepens, with the rider to invoke party's constitution over the National Working Committee members' court action. I'm not threatening, mere opinion, says Lukman. And on the 10th National Assembly, APC members write Adamu back Apabio Jibrin leadership. Take advantage of Bitiri's acceptability, APC urged. You can find that on page 16 and page 6. And we have on Sudan crisis, Egyptian officials making evacuation of Nigerians difficult. You want to know why that is happening? You can do well to read more of that story on page 5. How Nigeria can address economic challenges, coming from the World Bank. No plan to phase out redesign Naira notes, coming from the CBN. Lawan Atiku taxed Nigerian workers on hope and hard work. Why Buhari extended the CG immigration jury's tenure, you can find that on page 15. AMCON urges accelerated measures to recover 4 trillion naira debt. You can find that on page 27. Police reject 1 million naira bribe, arrest notorious ritualists in Ogun State. You can find that story too inside the paper. Group rejects separate succession plan, alleges tenure elongation. You can find that on page 24. Picture story here we guys by JAM Equal Opportunity Group at the National Open University of Nigeria in Abuja on Saturday, and that's really a great step. And that's all on the Blueprint newspaper.
On First News newspaper, Senate presidency, Northwest political group insists on Senator Jibrin. 2023 poll accept defeat you lost woefully, federal government tells Obi and Atiku. My achievements in 8 years, President Buhari lists gains of his administration. And if you want to know what the gains are, please get the First News newspaper and find the details inside the paper. Presidential jet flown abroad for comprehensive maintenance. And the big story, Sudan crisis. We no longer have food, Nigerian ambassador cries out. One student against attacking embassy officials says we are as vulnerable as stranded students. How we spent $2.1 million on buses to evacuate Nigerians. This is coming from the federal government. As of last week, we were looking at $1.2 million. And now, Monday, we're seeing that it's $2.1 million. So the money keep going high. At the downside of the paper, only the blind will accept 2023 presidential election outcome. This is coming from the Labour Party replying to Lai Mohammed. Suspended Adamawa Reg Brick silence says I was under pressure. Release Kanu before May 29, Ohaneze Indibo tells Buhari, says setting IPOP leader free will gladden Igbos. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. Inside sources clarify falsehood media attack against polarized bank. You can find that on page 4. Zenith Bank achieves remarkable 41% growth in gross earning in the first quarter of 2023. 4 trillion naira debt recovery. Don't allow few individuals escape with our commonwealth, coming from the AMCOM. The big story, no plan to phase out redesign naira note, coming from the CBN. We have some few picture story where we can see the new commissioner of police, Ogun State Command Yomi, being received by the state governor, Prince Dabo Abiodun, as the governor's office. And the second picture here, we can see the executive vice chairman, Nigerian Communication Commission, Professor Umar Dambata, with the former Minister of Agriculture, Alhaji Sani. They were at the residence of the Alhaji Musa, former Minister of Labour, during the condolence visit recently. And that's all on the Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
On Daily Independent, the big story, incoming government may consider phased fuel subsidy removal. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. At the top of the paper, Western Delta University, Abiabena gives 1 billion naira. Fayemi donates School of Policy Implementation. Peter Obi, Fayemi to become visiting lecturers. No plan to phase out redesign naira notes, coming from the CBN. Labour Party PDP tackle Lai Mohammed over fresh comment on presidential poll. On election violence, Serap drags INEC to court over failure to investigate governors and deputies. Iwayan Wu inaugurated as Ohaneze PG list agenda for Indibo. Dangote partners federal government earpiece on resettling evacuated Nigerians. This is still on the Sudan crisis and the ongoing evacuation. The details can be found on page 6. CNPP warns of foisting rubber stamp principal officers on National Assembly. Cautions of another executive legislative conclusion against citizens. The details can be found inside the paper. Why we postpone 2023 national census. This is a statement coming from the MPC. The details can be found on page 29. And we have a meeting where we have a picture story where we can see at the Ohaneze meeting and all of that. You can find the details inside the paper, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
All right, let's look at the Abuja Inquirer, where we have fear grip Abuja over gruesome murder of 2 women. Police keep mum. You can start reading the story on the front page and then on page 3. FCTA set to test run digital annual performance evaluation report. You can find that on page 5. AMAC seek partnership to eradicate malaria. You can find that on page 6. 60,000 candidates retake UTME over technical challenges. And then we have Malaysia, Taiwan, Indomia recall NAFDAC launches investigation. You can find that on page 11. The big story says civil war in NDDC. Chairman disowned $15 billion rail contract. No contract awarded yet coming from the management. On your chair, desperate to be executive chair coming from the stakeholders. You can find that story on the front page and continue to read more inside. We have a picture story where we can see the Vice President and Mo Ibrahim at weekend of the during the weekend at the 2023 Ibrahim Governance Weekend in Nairobi, Kenya, where the Nigerian Vice President joined other continental leaders to brainstorm on the progress of African continent. The theme of the year forum was Global Africa. Ozibanjo was on a panel with Kenya President William Ruto, the former president of the African Development Bank, Mr. Donald, among others. And we can see a picture story. We just hope that this will actually, provide solution to some of the problem we're going through in Africa as a whole. And that's all on the Abuja Inquirer.
On Nature News, rainfall forecast. Federal government warns of impending flood. And the big story, African Development Bank builds $25 billion world's largest solar zone to provide electricity for 250 million people. President tax U.S. varsity class on global warming. Climate change is unwise for Nigerians to abandon fossil fuels now. This is coming from Usibajo. How Nigerian-born UK-based doctor discovered frogs could treat diabetes. You can find the details inside the paper on page 6. Federal government orders no vaccination policy for control of bird flu in fowls. Nature care benefits of leafy greens. You can find the details on page 15. At the downside of the paper, Zubair emerges new NRA president. You can find the details of the election on page 21. And that's all the news on Nature News.
Well, in as much as they said in the UK, Nigerian born could actually discover that frogs, not any kind of frog. So we just hope that for those who want to know more about that story, it's very important that we, because we know that diabetes has been killing a lot of people. So it's important that everybody should be interested in this story and read more to know what species of frog.
And of course, you have to just wait for the detailed treatment.
Of course,
Rachel. Too excited.
Well, let's look at the Business AM newspaper. Africa's $1 trillion agribusiness port open to investors by 2030. And still on Business AM, we have $45 billion needed to fully harness existing potential, only $7 billion currently available. Still on Business AM newspaper, we have for incoming administration, urgent fiscal, monetary, trade policy action, says think tank. With the rider reforms must be predicted on inclusion, transparency, and accountability. Still on Business AM, we have some few picture stories. We also have some column on companies and business, where Zenith Bank first quarter of 2023 earning is up by 41%. We have private jet work equited for staff. We have AI to protect Nigerians' agriculture. We also have a new weapon against malaria. It's a visionary voice. You can read more of that. And we also have some few others where we have the FPI drop interest in Nigerian stock in the first quarter. We have many other stories on the Business AM. So you can grab the Business AM newspaper with more detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On the Sporting Sun newspaper, Haaland scores 50th goal of the season. Man City topples Arsenal. Fernandes' 100th goal gives Man U victory. Osimhen tears as Napoli fails to win Scudetto. Fiorentina spoils party in Naples. Napoli must beat underneath next weekend to claim title. The details can be found on page 6. Yamal becomes Barca's youngest ever La Liga player. You can find the details on page 3. And on the 17th AFCON, Golden Eaglets plucked 3 points off Zambia. The details can be found on page 8. Ashola leads Barcelona Femini to 8th Liga F title. Nigeria's 4x400-meter men shine at LSU Invitational. You can find the details inside the paper on page 7. Man City displaces Arsenal, goes top of table. You can find the details on page 5. We have Achraf Hakimi to cost Chelsea £60 million. We have Owoni constructs modern-day dressing room for Kwara School. The details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this
Sarah.
today. Thank you to our callers that called in this morning. Thank you to the crew members and to everyone that made sure this program is prompt on air. Until we come your way again tomorrow, please remain peaceful, be very civil, and make sure you don't get into trouble. Have a blessed Workers' Day ahead.